Just a quick bit of background. So the reason we decided to do this webinar around what is SharePoint, we were going to do one around SharePoint 2013, what's new and so on and so forth. But it kind of occurred to us that when we speak to customers about SharePoint, when we ask the question, what do you think SharePoint is? Do you know what SharePoint is? A lot of customers actually don't know. So the idea of this webinar is actually to give an overview just of what SharePoint is. And try and put some context around it and look at things from quite a high level. So it's not going to be a deep technical webinar. We're not going to go into a lot of detail around the SharePoint features. What we are going to try and do is give you a good feel for what SharePoint is. The demos and what we talk about does relate to SharePoint 2013, whether that's on-premise or whether it's hosted by Microsoft in the cloud. So when we show you some of the things here, they will relate to SharePoint 2013, but it's not a specific 2013 webinar. So click off with the next slide then. So, question around what is SharePoint? Well, some facts and figures for you. It's Microsoft's biggest selling product, and it brings in over $1 billion in revenue for Microsoft every year, and it's actually bigger than Office. So it's a huge product for Microsoft. There's been over 125 million licenses sold worldwide. So just to give you a feel for the number of people that are out there using this product, and yet still a lot of people don't actually really understand what it is and what it can do. It's a very complex product. There are a lot of features and functionality available in SharePoint, and it's pretty unique in what it does, in the types of functionality that it offers. There's also a lot of crossover in the features that are available in SharePoint. So often there's more than one way to satisfy one requirement. So it takes a bit of knowledge and a bit of understanding the product to understand the best way to do something a lot of the time. And often those features that are available in SharePoint can be combined to deliver some other sort of functionality. So it does get very complex when you come to actually doing a SharePoint deployment. So really, SharePoint is a toolkit for the organization. It's an enterprise level toolkit which can satisfy a lot of requirements that are out there. And the more you get to understand SharePoint, the more you actually start to see the level of complexity and the level of tools that are available for you to use. Now, when we talk to people about SharePoint, or if any of you have discussed SharePoint with people previously, and I've been guilty of this myself, it's very easy to get into a complete overload in terms of the terminology that's available. So what we want to do for this webinar was just to take a step back and look at it from a higher level, and rather than get into the nuts and bolts and the nitty-gritty of all the things that SharePoint does, is have a look at a high level at the core things that SharePoint is capable of. So I've put in this slide here the main areas that we speak to customers about, we see customers using SharePoint for, and we'll cover some of these in the demonstration a little later on in the webinar. So electronic forms and workflow, the ability to create browser-based forms which are filled in through Internet Explorer or any other browser, and then usually have some sort of process attached to them. Collaboration, so the ability to provide workspaces for people to come together, share and create information. Social, so this is quite a big one for SharePoint 2013. So this is the ability to kind of share ad hoc knowledge, connect with other people, create communities and share information easily through the SharePoint environment. Document management, so SharePoint is a full-blown document management system. So a lot of people out there do actually just use it for storing their corporate documents. We've got version control and all those sorts of things. Business intelligence, this is something Jess is going to touch on a bit later on. So the ability to have KPIs, scorecards, dashboards, and also do some analysis of content as well. Search, so SharePoint is a full enterprise search product as well. So if you wanted to, you could just deploy SharePoint and only use it for search. Microsoft have made a huge advance in the search capabilities with SharePoint 2013. They purchased a product a few years back which is called Fast, and you used to have to buy that as an add-on for SharePoint, but that's now fully integrated through the SharePoint 2013 product stack, and we'll look at the search a bit later on. And really, all of these things combine together to create business solutions to satisfy the requirements that you might have. So Jess is now going to give a bit of a background to where SharePoint's come from and where it's going.
Thank you. So one of the things which helps with understanding what SharePoint is and what you might use it for is to actually look at how it's developed over the various versions. So SharePoint first appeared as SharePoint Portal Server 2001, and the fact that Portal is in the name is key to what SharePoint was at the time and what it still is now. So the idea of a portal is that you go to a single place, a single point, a single site, and you have access to the various resources, the various tools, the various applications you need to do your job. So the whole point of this is that SharePoint is the portal into your business, into whatever resources are required. So Portal was there right at the heart of SharePoint from the beginning, and that theme has continued. But it was also there as a way of sharing your content, sharing information, and building these collaborative spaces. So right from the start, SharePoint was all about sharing and collaboration. And this continued through SharePoint 2003, but adding the very first hints of social with this concept of a personal site, as well as the first hints of search. And it amused me when I looked up the descriptions of what SharePoint 2007 was capable of, that it comes up with, integration with Office, which, having seen the latest versions, is fairly amusing if you look back at 2003. But going from 2003 to 2007 was a massive jump. Every time we have a new edition of a product, we refer to sometimes the feature gap. And the gap between 2003 and 2007 wasn't so much a gap as the Grand Canyon, because suddenly there was a huge amount of functionality added around things like the search, around content management, so moving from informal sharing towards a structured content management environment. The inclusion of these electronic forms, these workflows, so you can actually build automation and have process efficiency built into SharePoint. So it stops being just a place where you share things and becomes a place where you are actually running your business and building these business applications to drive forward your business. And of course the BI, so being able to have dashboards and reports surface through SharePoint. And all of this builds within 2010 with more around business intelligence. There were huge leaps there, more around content, taking the content management into a full structured records management system. And then moving on into 2013, every edition of SharePoint takes what you could do in the previous edition and builds on top of it. And we've still got these core capabilities. It's still about sharing information, sharing resources. It's about organizing things, so organizing your content, but also organizing how you access your information. Searching, discovering, and building applications, all of the while with this management element to it. In terms of why you might use SharePoint, I think it's interesting to look at some of the Gartner research as to what are the top priorities for technology. So Gartner are a major business analyst that look at, and every year they publish this list of what are the top 10 priorities from a technology point of view. And I've put in bold the top 5 because all of these 5 are actually addressable through SharePoint. So big data and BI, tick, yep, SharePoint can help with that. Mobility, SharePoint 2013 has got a strong story around having a mobile platform, having apps available for mobile devices. Cloud, yep, there's a cloud option. Social media, absolutely. Collaboration, definitely. All of this functionality built into it. And really you could carry on down that list because yes, you can do your security through it. Yes, you can modernize your apps by moving them to SharePoint. So really SharePoint is a key piece towards meeting your technology priorities. And with that, I'll hand back to Alex.
Thanks, Jess. So what we want to do next is to have a look at some of the areas I touched on earlier. And what we can do here is I'll have a little bit of a discussion, show a couple of slides around each of these areas, or a slide around each area, and then dip into a demonstration based on our own internal deployment of SharePoint. So when I show you the demonstration, you will actually be seeing a live system. It's not smoke and mirrors, it's the actual environment that we use day to day. So we'll run through these. You'll probably get a slight delay as I flick between the slides and the desktop, but hopefully that won't cause anybody any problems. As we're going through, like I said before, we will do a Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions, just make a note of them and we'll pick them up at the end. So the first one is content management. So what we're talking about in terms of content management with SharePoint is primarily the ability to create intranets and websites within SharePoint. So an intranet is often the first place people will start with SharePoint. They'll normally have an intranet, they want to revise it, they want to revamp it, and they've got SharePoint licensing and they'll use that product. What's great is that if you're using SharePoint for your intranet and your website, you've then got a single platform. So if you want to move content from your intranet to your website, I don't know, you might have a requirement to publish some of your policies externally or something like that, then you can just easily move them because they're on the same platform. And the same goes the other way around. So if you want to capture information from your website, possibly using a SharePoint electronic form, you can easily pull that back into the internal site, your intranet, because everything's running on that same platform. Plus, people don't need to learn two different systems. Everything's running on the same level. The intranet that you put in, you can call it a digital workspace, you can call it a portal, whatever name you want to give it, but it usually provides a central portal as well to get off, to springboard off to the other areas of SharePoint functionality that you've delivered. And that's often a concept that people use when they're putting SharePoint in. People will hit the intranet and then they'll have access to all the other areas of functionality that have been delivered with SharePoint. SharePoint can be quite heavily branded. I think it's quite important for things like intranets not to get too bogged down in that, because you can lose sight of what you're trying to actually achieve, which is this authoritative environment for publishing business information. But SharePoint can be quite heavily branded, and it does use these standard tools and technologies. So any standard web technologies that people are familiar with, if you do have people in-house, or if you're familiar yourself with things like, and I don't want to get too technical, but if you're familiar with CSS, with XHTML and JavaScript, these sort of standard technologies, SharePoint does use those technologies as well. So you're not having to completely learn something new from scratch. And now if you are using SharePoint for your content management system, you're not having to write everything yourself. It comes with a whole selection of what are called apps and web parts. So you can go to a central store and look for things like image carousels, anything like that you really want. You can download that into your SharePoint environment and use that. You don't have to create it from scratch. And web parts are kind of widgets that come with SharePoint. There's a whole host, probably 50 or 60 of them, and you can drop those onto pages and they will deliver a specific piece of functionality for you. So you don't have to go writing code to build up these quite dynamic and nice looking pages. There are components there for you to already use. So what I'll do is I'll just jump back into our internal system now and let you see that. Okay, so you should all be able to see our SharePoint environment now. The other thing I'll mention about our internal SharePoint environment is that we've kept it all what we call vanilla. So we don't use custom code or anything like that. That's purposeful. That was an intention, so that customers can see what can be achieved without having to spend a lot of money or a lot of time on development work around SharePoint. So this is just our standard homepage. We've got some graphics and so on there, a bit of an image rotator, give you a bit of a view of some menu systems. This isn't the standard menu system. We dropped this in here, but it's using that sort of mega menu type concept. And it's a very clear, uncluttered page. We're using we don't have a formal news area, but we use the newsfeed functionality in SharePoint for people to publish ad hoc news, which we find very useful. We're not really big enough to have a comms team creating news, but you can build up any number of pages and any sort of number of site structures around this, and I'm going to show you now just kind of how that works. So if I'm creating a page in SharePoint, I can just come to the menu here, as long as I've got permissions, and I can add a page. And this goes now and just asks me to provide a name for the page. Let's call it test page, inventively, and create that. And this is going to give me the ability to show you some of the sort of content management features of SharePoint. So I've got my standard page now, and I can just start typing information in here. And as you can see, it's quite a user-friendly environment. If any of you are using Office 2013 or even Office 2010, we've got that ribbon type functionality, so people don't have to kind of familiarize themselves with the different user interface too much. And it's just a standard, what you see is what you get editor. So I can just start typing text in here. Won't worry about spelling mistakes too much. And I can highlight that, and I can choose from any number of preset styles that I've got in here. And this is all customizable. You'd obviously set these based on your own design principles for the organization. I can, from here, insert different things. So I can insert reusable content. So if I might have a header or a footer that I want to drop in here, I can add hyperlinks. I can drop in video and audio links if I want to, or images. So I just click on these and it just says, well, where's the picture? Is it on your computer? Is it already in SharePoint, or do you want to reference it from a website? So you can see it's quite intuitive to use. In terms of the page, this page I've got here is just a standard page which will just take text. You can see there's not much I can do on there apart from type in that box that I showed you, or add an image at the bottom. However, I can set up a number of page layouts, so I can enforce consistency. So I can say that in this intranet, I want to allow people to choose from a set number of page layouts. And if I choose a different page layout from here, so I'll just choose the blank web part page, for example, what it does is on the fly, it'll go off and change that page layout to something different. So I've still got my text box here now that I had before, but now I've got different zones which I can actually drop some functionality into. So on here, if I click add a web part, this will show you the web parts that I was mentioning earlier. So this menu gives me a list of all the web parts which come with SharePoint, which I can choose to add to my page. Now, I'm not going to go through them all, we'd be here forever. But to give you an example, I can drop in here, for example, an RSS viewer. So if I want to pull in information from the BBC News site, for example, I can drop that web part on there, and it's got some parameters I can configure, and I've suddenly got an RSS feed on my web part. I can do the same for I can do some which show me the members of the site. I can drop in information about documents. I can drop in a web part which shows me an image. I can drop in a web part that shows me a video. There are a whole host of web parts I can drop in there. I put them on the page wherever I want, and I just configure them to pull in what I need to pull in. So they're very useful indeed. Once a page is finished, I can then just publish that page just by saving it. So I can save that, and I will then probably have a workflow attached to it, so I can have some sort of check in place whereby somebody can approve that, and then that will then show up. The other thing we've got with SharePoint is scheduling as well. So if I want to put a news page up, for example, then I can choose to show that on a certain date and then remove it on another date. So that scheduling functionality is something else that people tend to find quite useful for intranet type environments. I'll just show you now. If I save that page, you'll see there's not really much to it. I didn't put much on it, but that's me created a SharePoint page there. We can have any number of sites in our structure. We can have any number of pages associated with those sites. And one of the other great things we can do is those web parts I showed you, there are some aggregation web parts. So what we can do is we can pull in content that exists elsewhere in SharePoint onto our pages without having to create manual links to that. So a good example of that is when people, for example, want to have a page of policy documents. Those policy documents might be scattered all over SharePoint, but we can actually drop a web part on this page that says, find me all the policy documents that exist in SharePoint, pull them onto this page and show them in this particular way. Again, we don't really have time to run through that at the moment, how that works, but it's a really good way to pull in and create quite dynamic pages without having to do a lot of manual work. In terms of websites, I had to show you our original website in SharePoint. We're currently in the process of migrating it from WordPress. This isn't live, but it's just to show you, a bit more branding or a bit more customization around SharePoint. Again, we've got a similar sort of mega menu environment here, and we've got some case studies. I do hasten to add that this is a work in progress, and we're currently hoping to progress this onto the production quite soon. But this took a number of just a matter of days. It was very quick to import from WordPress and do the work on. Again, because you've got those tools that are there, and you don't have to manually code everything from scratch. I do have a link here for the Marantz website, just to show you how far you can take these things. So this is the Marantz website, and this is actually created on SharePoint 2013. Obviously, a lot more time and effort is going into the branding, and this wasn't one that we worked on, but it's one of the better SharePoint 2013 websites out there. And I just wanted to show you this to show you, just how far you can take it in terms of branding and customization for a SharePoint 2013 website. Okay, I'm just going to flick back now to the slide deck. We'll move on to the next area. Okay, so the next area is collaboration. So I've purposely not pulled out a document management slide or demonstration, because I want to include that with collaboration, because for us, when we deploy document management, it is often in the conjoined with collaboration. It's part of a collaborative piece, not just about document management. So it's about creating workspaces for people. So creating websites, internal websites where people can go and share and work on information together. Now, often that breaks down into 2 or 3 specific areas. In that, you'll have a set of sites for functions or teams, departments, divisions, directorates. However you structure your organization, you'll often create a number of collaborative sites where those people can go and work together, often in a similar way that they've been working in shared drives, that sort of thing, but with a lot more functionality. And they may or may not be locked down just to those teams, but they are places where people go to work together with their teammates. You'll then have another set of sites which are more cross-organizational, so sites where people can come together from different parts of the organization to collaborate and share and create information together. Now that will often take the form of projects. That's when we see all the time when we're doing SharePoint deployments, but often things just more ad hoc communities as well. So it might be that there might be a specialization within your organization where people want to come together and share information. It could be a sports club. It could be anything really. It's just the ability and this concept that you can create these structured sites around your organizational hierarchy, and also have these ad hoc sites where people can just create the sites and bring together the people who want to work from different areas of the business. In these sites we can store documents and files, so we've got libraries where we can drop in documents, images, forms, this sorts of unstructured data we call it, and store that in the sites. And then we've got a whole host of collaboration tools as well, which I'll show you. So we, out of the box with SharePoint, we can, within these sites that we can create calendars, tasks, links, all these sorts of things, so we can store information that's not just focused around files. It's the collaborative sites are also integrated with Link and Office. So if I'm working in Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, these are nicely integrated with SharePoint, both being Microsoft products. And also if you use Link, some of you I'm sure will be using Link, we've got the integration with that as well, so we can message people, we can see people's presence from within the SharePoint site as well. And finally, the last point on that is that these collaborative sites can be made available externally as well. So while a lot of this collaboration will happen with people within the organization, we could create a number of these sites that actually work with third parties, joint ventures, these sorts of things, and bring these people, maybe not into our internal SharePoint environment, but to a similar environment which we control, so we can share information with people outside the organization. So I'll just jump back into onto my desktop now and show you a bit about that. Okay, so the site I'm going to show you here, this is our business productivity team site. So I'll just give you a little bit of a run through of some of the functionality you can see on here. So on here we've got a news feed. So rather than using discussion boards and group emails, things like that, we now use this news feed where any information can just be posted up. It can be quite informal. You can put a comment on there, a note on there, and people can respond to that. And we will all get, everybody who subscribes to this site will get an email to tell them that there's been some information. So that's our kind of news and announcements now. We use the social features of SharePoint within our collaboration site. We've got an area to store documents, so all the documents we want to share within the team we can store in here, and I'll go into document library in a minute and let you see that. We've got a links list, so these are just some of the links that we most often use when we're accessing the site. These are just hyperlinks. I click on that, it'll open up the SharePoint TechNet website. We've got graphics libraries, things like that. So if I just click on here before I show the documents, you can see the out-of-the-box SharePoint image library is quite nice. You can see these are some of the images that I used in my slide deck. So if anybody wants to come in here and prepare their own presentation, they can come in, look at the images available, take a look at that, download a copy, put it in a presentation. It's quite a nice format. We've got calendars. So if I show you in here, I've got a team calendar here. This is shared amongst everybody that's in our team. We put things like annual leave, other webinars, other meetings and so on in there that are relevant to the rest of the team. If I can link that to Outlook, I'll actually open my Outlook client up in the background and I'll show you that before we move away. But I can link that to Outlook, so I can actually have that calendar in my Outlook, and I can also update it from Outlook as well. So I've got my own personal calendar, but I can work with the team as well. Just to jump into the document library, I mentioned that we do have a place to store documents in this team site. We've structured ours using folders. So within here we can store any number of different file formats that you use for documents. Just go into the sample documents folder to show you some of the examples. So in here I've just got a standard template and an Excel execution plan. And I've actually got some links to documents in here as well. So these documents don't live in this site because I don't want duplication, but I've actually pointed out and used links to other sites that I've got and just referenced documents in there. So I can still see them from in my site, but they don't actually live here. So it reduces that duplication. Just to show you some of the functionality in here as well, if I hover over this, this menu system here, I can actually get a preview of that document. It uses Outlook, Office web apps. So I can see that document, I can scroll through it, so I can have a look and see if that's a document I'm actually after. I've got further menus here, and I can actually look at the version history for that document. I can edit it, I can kick off any workflows that are associated with it, so on and so forth. If I want to add a document, I can just click this button here, and that let me add any existing documents that I've got on my computer to this library, and then they're available to everybody else. Alternatively, if I want to create a new document from within SharePoint, I can do that from up here. So if I click on that new document, I've got a raft of document types in here that I might want to use for my team, and I can click on any of these and create an instance of that document type. Just to show you an example, so I've got a high-level design. So if I'm creating a new high-level design for a customer, I can come in here and click on that. It will open up Word. Once I'm working in Word, then it's no different from from whether you've got SharePoint or not. You're just using the Word client then. But what I've set that to do is when that opens up a new instance of that high-level design document type, I've set a template to go with that as well. So that's opened up a standard template that we use. I can then go in and populate and fill in that template. You'll see it's just a lot of standard headings that we use in our documents, and also provide some metadata or some tagging for that. So I've said for any high-level design document, I want to collect some additional information for that. So I can say, well, yeah, we've got a bit of this document relates to SharePoint. There's a bit of SQL in there as well, and maybe some System Center too. And actually, there's quite a lot of stuff in here about multimedia. So I've created that document. It's based on a standard template, and I've actually managed to capture some information about the document as well. And then I can save that back into that document repository. I won't do that in case it just takes a while to save, but you get the idea. And that would then save that back into SharePoint. So it's quite intuitive, quite straightforward, that document management usage, the ability to share and create documents within SharePoint. And just quickly, one of the other things I wanted to show is that I don't know if many of you use OneNote. It's certainly a tool that I've been using for quite a long time now, and I see more and more people using. But we actually have a couple of shared notebooks in this site as well. So if I go back to the home page for this site, if I click on General Notes, we've got a OneNote notebook which opens up in Internet Explorer, and it allows us to share information throughout the team. So I can just go into any of the areas within this notebook, and I can just go in and add ad hoc notes, create new notepads, etc., etc. And what's neat about this is that the rest of the team have got this synchronized with their local installs of OneNote. So everybody, when they're on site or off site, can fill in their OneNote notebooks, and they all synchronize together within our SharePoint team site and then feed back out again. So if you think about wikis, which have traditionally been used, which it can be quite difficult to get used to the syntax and the way that wikis work, this is much more intuitive, and it allows us to have this collective shared group of notes, which we can then use locally within our laptops. So it's a really nice feature of SharePoint 2013, the shared notebook functionality. Again, I'm not going to go through all the details of how OneNote works, but it was just to show you some of the new capabilities within 2013. So I could spend a hell of a lot more time on this with you. We could spend hours and hours talking about collaboration and document management, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavour of what's there and what's available, just based on what we're currently doing with it as well. So just jump back into the slides now. Okay, so the next is social and SkyDrive. So social, we're talking about quite a few areas really with SharePoint Social. One of the key things that a lot of people want to look at is user profiles. So we can give everybody who uses SharePoint within the organization their own personal profile, which they can keep up to date. Often is a big advancement on current phone lists and things like that people use. The other thing, one of the main areas of social is this newsfeed concept. So everybody can have a newsfeed as well. So it gives them the ability to track and follow information about content and people within SharePoint. I don't know if many of you are Twitter users, but there's this concept of hashtags and mentions as well. So if I want to update something on a news feed, I can actually categorize it by using a hashtag. So I can put a note on and say, I don't know, for example, #SharePoint. And that means that this post was about SharePoint. And anybody who's interested in SharePoint and chooses to follow that hashtag, they would get an update about that. And I'll show you that when we do the quick look at the demonstration. And when we talk about the mentions, I can actually reference people in my newsfeed as well. So if I want to talk about somebody, or maybe give somebody some praise, I can mention them in the newsfeed, and they'll get an update to tell them that they've been mentioned in one of the SharePoint newsfeeds. And really, these newsfeeds give the ability to people to choose the information that they want to be alerted about in SharePoint. So I subscribe to different types of content in SharePoint, and that all feeds up through my own personal newsfeed and lets me keep track of things. Really useful. The other thing we talk about SkyDrive is personal storage. So we can give everybody a SharePoint site as well, where they can store content and manage it. So if you think about current shared drives, we can actually move people into a SharePoint environment where they can store their own personal information instead of on a shared drive. And really it gives fast access to people, knowledge and content. It gives you a site where you can manage and you can choose the information that you want to see and the people you want to follow and the information you want to follow. I'll just jump into okay. So this is my personal news feed. So you can see in here there are a number of updates that I've got on this news feed. Some are information that I've posted, and other updates in the news feed are based on people that I'm following or content that I'm following. So what I do is, this is actually my home page when I open up Internet Explorer, and when I do so, I get an instant look at all the information that I'm interested in bubbled up through this news feed. You can see down the right hand side here that I'm following 16 people, 3 documents, 7 sites and 4 hashtags. So I've chosen that's what I want to follow, and I will now get updates about that information based on the fact I've chosen to follow it. I've got a profile in here, so if I click on About Me, this is my SharePoint profile. There's a bit of blurb about me, and then some information, some contact information, and also some information on interests. Everybody in Visual has got that information. It's all searchable, so I can actually find people not just based on their department or their name, but actually what they know and what they do, and can they actually help me solve a problem. So that's really important information that I've got stored in that profile there. And I can actually edit that here as well. So some of the information in my profile will be locked down. It'll come from another source, so I can't change it. But then other areas of information, it'll be up to me to keep that up to date. So you see, I can't change my job title, that's coming from somewhere else, but I can change my picture, I can change the About Me information. Okay, I just want to show you an example of a newsfeed post. So for example, I might create a document that I want to show somebody. So I might quickly create a document now. So I'm just going into Word now, I'm creating a document. I'm going to save that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save it onto what's called my SkyDrive Pro client. So I'm saving this onto my computer, but the folder I'm saving it into is actually linked to my personal site, so it synchronizes it. So I'm just going to resave the document as that actually. So I've saved the document onto my computer, but it's actually synchronizing with my personal site. So that document is now going to be synced up to my site. And if I click on SkyDrive here, you'll see I've got a little tab at the top. If I click on that within my personal site, that takes me to the SharePoint synchronized copy of that information. So it was in here, shared with everyone. Okay, so you'll see it just says a few seconds ago because I copied that in. I created a new version. Now if I take a copy of the URL for that, I can go back to my newsfeed and I can say, up here, share with everyone, I can say, actually, I want to post this in this sales site. So I'm going to now post something into the sales site from here, and it'll go into the sales newsfeed within the sales collaboration site. I'll say, can you please review this? Just some thoughts at the moment. Might add a hashtag in there. SharePoint, and add another one for marketing. Okay, and then I can paste in my link. Okay, and I post that. Now what that's done is that's actually posted that link to that into the SharePoint, into the sales site. They'll get a link to that, they can look at the document and they can start to reply to that. So you can see it's a really quick and easy way with the social features to actually start to get feedback and share information and gather information without having to send around emails and have multiple versions and threaded emails. It just keeps things nice and simple. Okay, I'll jump back into the slides again now. Sorry, I'm going through this at quite a pace because there's a lot to cover. I hope I'm not losing anybody. And like I say, I'm happy to have a follow-up conversation around any of these areas. So the last area I wanted to look at was search. So like I mentioned before, SharePoint is a full enterprise search product as well. So we can search for content and people. So basically we can look for files, documents, images, etc., but we can also look for people based on their profile information that I showed you. I mentioned before that that is all searchable. Very, very useful, very powerful. We can link to multiple sources. So while SharePoint search is obviously designed to search SharePoint content, we can point it to other places as well. So we could point it to a shared drive, we could point it to a website, we can point it anywhere we want really, and we can include those results in our search. We can include that information in the results that we present back to people through the SharePoint search. The search also allows for very powerful content aggregation. So while you can do a traditional search, you put a query in, press enter, and it brings back the results, you can actually use the search capabilities to pull information together on web pages or intranet pages, like I mentioned previously. So if something's available within the search index, we can actually use the background search capabilities to sort of do pre-canned search results on intranet pages to pull information together. I'm not sure I explained that particularly well, but it's a very powerful product. I think the key thing there is that SharePoint search isn't just about putting information in a box and pressing enter. It's actually about being able to collate information and present it to people as well. We've got result refiners in there, so when we get results back when we do a search in SharePoint, we can drill down through those results to very quickly and very easily get down to the result that we're after, assuming that hasn't come back in the top anyway. It's got extensive configuration options. Again, we could spend hours and hours and hours, probably days, going through all the configuration options of SharePoint search. It's a very powerful product. And for any of you out there who where compliance or potential litigation is a concern, particularly in the public sector, there's a whole e-discovery component in SharePoint 2013 search. So if we want to search for particular criteria across not just SharePoint but also across Exchange and Link as well, we can do that through the SharePoint search. It will find all the information we're after, it will put it on hold, it will collate it together in a site, and we can preserve that information and present it to whoever we need to. Again, a very, very powerful product. I'll just quickly go back to the search now. The search demonstration won't take too long. I'm just give you a quick flavour for what it looks like. So if I come into, I'm in my SharePoint homepage here. If I just do a search, I'm just going to do a search for Link, one of the products that we consult around. I get my results back here. So just to give you a bit of a walkthrough of some of the things, we've got some promoted results here. So we've actually said to SharePoint, if somebody searches for Link, they might well be looking for the Unified Communications team site that we've got. So we're going to promote that to the top. And if not, they might well be looking for the Microsoft sites. So they're called promoted results. We've then got a section here which shows all the people who work in the Link arena. So I can quickly click on any of them and link through to their personal profile page that you saw. And then down here we've got the normal sorts of results. So this is where we can see all the documents that we've got stored in SharePoint that relate to Link. Down here we've got the refiners that I mentioned. So I might say, well, actually I'm only interested in Word documents that relate to Link. So I can quickly cut down on the number of results that I've got there. Or I might say I'm actually only interested in search results which relate, who were authored by Alan Rogers. So again, it helps me drill down through those search results very quickly and very easily. And along the top here, I've got some tabs which help me to also filter that information by saying, well, just show me the people where Link's relevant. So that's taken away all the document information and just presenting me now with the people who work with Link. And you'll see here, just to point out, that this presence information. So if you do have Link, when I hover over Brian's name there, you can see I get the link options now. So I can actually send Brian an instant message, I can send him an email, I can initiate a telephone call with him. That link integration is fantastic. I actually couldn't do any of that at the moment because you can see he's on Do Not Disturb. I could do with Harry forever because he's available. I click on the conversations and I see all the conversations where links have been mentioned now in those news feeds that we've looked at. So I can now look at all the newsfeed posts with links being mentioned and try and find the information that I'm after. Okay. Excuse me. So that's just to show you the search interface. We're not going to go into the search configuration. That again is something we need to follow up on at a later date. But I just want to show you the SharePoint interface and how quickly and easily it is to drill down and find the information that you're after. Sorry if that was a bit rapid. Like I said, there was a lot to get through there, and we don't have a huge amount of time, but hopefully that gave you a flavour for, or an actual visual representation of how some of these things actually do work in SharePoint. This is the last slide we've got in this area. So the services really start with an architectural design session. This is a one-day chalk and talk session, we call it, whereby we can come to you on site and we'll spend a day talking around SharePoint, the areas which you think are most important, and give you a bit more of a deep dive technical overview of those SharePoint features, and also discuss how they might fit together, give you some sort of idea and help you build up a picture in your mind about how you might want SharePoint to actually work. That tends to be focused on more of a technical audience, and like I say, just gives you more of a feel for what you want to do with SharePoint. The next one on there is Salem. So we are, I believe, still only the UK licensed Salem practitioner. Salem is a methodology for delivering SharePoint, and it's all about it's a strategy engagement. So the idea with Salem is we work with you to plan out, well, first of all, to understand exactly what SharePoint can do from a business perspective, the problems it can solve, how deploying SharePoint features and functionality are often merged together and combined to satisfy those business requirements, what the considerations are in terms of governance, in terms of adoption, training, policy, all that sort of thing. And we work with you to build up a roadmap. So this is something that goes before a SharePoint design. You actually plan out and roadmap your whole SharePoint deployment before you get started. It's something we find that customers find incredibly useful. Not for everybody, it tends to be more aligned to our larger customers, but it is a great and valuable service. Design and planning is traditional SharePoint consultancy, really. It's whereby our consultants come on site, they can work with you to define and document, or define, design and document how SharePoint will work for a particular area within the organization. And we will create a high-level design and a low-level design based on that engagement, which you can then use to either deploy or configure SharePoint yourself, or you can continue to work with us and we can help you actually implement that SharePoint functionality. Health check. So if you've already got SharePoint, we actually do a health check service as well, where we can come and look at your environment, both from a technical and functional perspective, and then we can create a review and recommendations document for you. Again, you can then either use that to go and remediate your environment, or you can continue to engage with us and we can help you complete that work. And the last thing on there is just general consultancy. So we do, it's not a preferred approach, but we do ad hoc, just time and materials type SharePoint consultancy as well. So we do offer a whole raft of services around SharePoint. I just wanted to point out some follow-on webinars and events that we are going to run. So we're going to do another webinar around collaboration and document management. So it'll be a similar sort of length, but we'll focus solely on that area. We're going to do SharePoint Social. So again, we kind of skirted around it today quite quickly. There is a lot more to look at, so we're doing a webinar specifically around the social aspects too. We're going to do a webinar on records management and compliance. So if you do have compliance requirements and you are thinking about deploying SharePoint as a document management system, then that webinar will give you an overview of the features and functionality relevant to that. And we'll also touch a bit more on that e-discovery that I mentioned. And within our offices in Stafford, we're going to run a Salem event as well. So I mentioned the Salem about the strategy engagements that we do. The first step in that is always a 2-hour whiteboard session. It's actually free of charge. It's a sort of a pre-sale session that we do. So by all means, we can come and deliver one of those to you if you're interested on site. But we're going to run one of those 2-hour sessions for a group within our Stafford offices, just to give you more of a feeling about what Salem is and let you kind of decide whether you feel like that strategy piece is actually quite valuable and important to you before you actually start to implement SharePoint. Also, if you've implemented SharePoint and you feel it's not really working, it's not getting adopted, it's not progressing how you want, the Salem sessions, again, can be really useful in helping realign that. So those are the upcoming webinars. I'm not got any dates on those at the moment, but you will be included on the mailing list as you were for this one. So come to the Q&A now. I put my details up there, so feel free to take a note of those details while we're doing the Q&A part now. You can email me. You can use that address to also connect to me on Link if you have Link, and also a telephone number there. Feel free to call me as well, and I'll be able to either help with any questions or any queries you've got based on this webinar, or also arrange any follow-up activities. So if you'd like to speak to us about any of our services that we offer around SharePoint, then please contact me on those details, and I'll be able to help with that. Now, right at the start, we said with the Q&A that some people were able to use the IM client, the messaging service on Link, some people weren't. Could one of the people who mentioned previously that the messaging service wasn't working just tell me if it is now, if you're still connected? Anybody? So the reason I'm asking is that it was just going to be a simpler way to do the Q&A, but if anybody's got any questions, then feel free to come off mute and we can address those questions now, because I think there were some issues with using the messaging client on Link when you were connecting in. Does anybody have any questions following that? No? Okay. So if nobody's got any questions, then like I say, please do feel free to contact me on the details that are on the screen at the moment out with this webinar, and I'll be happy to help or point you in any other direction.
Hi, Alex.
Hi there.
What's your email address, Alex? I can't see on the screen.
Oh, sorry.
So.
It's Alex E. So ALEXE.
Yep.
At.
Yep.
Risual. I'll just spell it just in case. RISUAL.
Yep.
.com. So AlexE@risual.com. Do you want me to? I'll read out my telephone number as well, just in case anybody wants to do that. In case you prefer it. It's 07507 726 457. So that's 07507 726 457. And like I mentioned before as well, if anybody was particularly keen on that BI piece, and unfortunately we had to skip that, then use those details to contact me, and I'll see if we can arrange something, a short webinar or something with Jess to cover those areas off.
Hi Alex, I have one quick question, please.
Yep.
Can you tell me, please, if there will be a follow-up webinar specific to content management systems?
There isn't one planned at the moment. That's not to say that we couldn't schedule one in. So if anybody else would be keen to see a content management webinar, then if you could drop me an email and let me know. If we get enough responses, then we'll do that. If not, then the whole purpose of this was to try and engage with people around SharePoint. So I'm more than happy to have a separate offline meeting with you around content management if that's an area you're particularly interested in.
Thank you.
So if you want to, if you wouldn't mind emailing me directly, just with your details, I can give you a call and we can decide whether we just do it by telephone or whether it's an on-site visit or whatever it might be, and we can look at that in more depth.
Thank you, Alex.
No problem. Okay, there are still a few people connected, so what I'll do is I'll go on mute now, but I'll stay online for the next next few minutes, just in case anybody has got a question, but they've just not unmuted or anything like that. So so what I'll do is I'll stay online for the next couple of minutes till everybody's dropped off, and if nobody's got any questions, I'll sign off. So thank you everybody for your time, really appreciate it, and hopefully hear from you